Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's meeting of the Scrutiny Committee External. I'm Brian Perry, Democratic Services Manager. I'm going to start the meeting by informing the committee that the convener, Councillor Brown, has intimated her resignation as convener from the committee, and that will be picked up by Council in December. We'll be asked to appoint a new convener. In the meantime, for this meeting, can I ask if a member here would wish to chair the meeting? Normally, it's a member of the opposition. So if somebody could step forward, I'd appreciate it.
I nominate Councillor Kelly.
Councillor Kelly has been nominated and accepted. So if you'd care to move up to the seat beside me, we can move on. You're happy to start, convener? Chair.
Hi, welcome everyone to the Scrutiny Committee external meeting on today, the 5th of October. Begin with apologies.
I have one apology from Councillor Brown. I'm sorry, two apologies, one from Councillor Anne Ritchie as well.
Thank you. Anyone else? No. Members should declare any financial and non-financial interest they have in any item of business at the meeting, identifying the relevant agenda item and the nature of the interest. Is anyone online or in person? No? Okay. Move on to the minute of the meeting of the Scrutiny Committee held on the 17th of August 2023. Everyone's read that? Anyone have any changes to make to it? No? Okay, can we agree that that's...
Agreed.
Agreed.
I think the next report, convener, just to anticipate what you're going to say, but it's the Police Scotland area performance. There is a cover report from the Director of Transformation, Communities and Corporate Services. This really just lays out the fact that in terms of the Police Scotland Act, that Police Scotland are required to bring a performance report to the council, and they do that through the Scrutiny Committee External. There's a performance plan, and performance is measured against this plan. So we have today to discuss it. We have Chief Superintendent Barry Blair and Chief Inspector Lindsay Kidd. I'd probably expect just to move to them and ask them to present.
Yeah, please.
Okay, thank you, convener. Good morning, councillors. I'm Chief Superintendent Barry Blair, Divisional Commander, Forth Valley, and delighted to be here along with Chief Inspector Lindsay Kidd, the Commander for Falkirk, to present the update on our scrutiny report. The report's been provided, and I'll shortly ask Lindsay to take members through some of the highlights of that report and clearly invite questions in relation to it. I hope you'll see that the report presents a number of really good examples of policing performance, both in terms of policing specific, but also in terms of partnership working. And the report, as you'll see, covers a period of 22-23, which effectively is the last of our previous policing plan, and I'm grateful that members were able to approve the policing plan for the next 3 years back in May. I thought before I asked Lindsay to pick up, I'll just cover a couple of quick key strategic points, given that the plan does relate to that period. I thought I'd just bring members up to date on some of the, as I said, a couple of key strategic changes within the organisation, and maybe just reflect a couple of key challenges that we face currently. So, as we only report annually to Scrutiny, there'll be a number of changes, myself and Lindsay included, within that, but we've had a number of executive changes, and we are currently awaiting the start of our new Chief Constable Joe Farrell, who takes up office from Monday, and we're very much looking forward to welcoming her into the organisation to lead us forward. And as I say, that will take effect from Monday following Sir Ian Livingston's retirement earlier this year. I am sure you will have seen and be aware of the financial challenges that the organisation is facing, and over the past year and over the period of this report and into this financial year, we've seen a reduction in officer headcount from 17,234 down to circa 16,600. In Forth Valley Division, and Falkirk Area Command has taken a proportionate share of that reduction. Members will probably have likewise seen the current reporting in relation to our financial position, whereby we're currently tracking around about a £19 million shortfall in this year's budget. However, within that, I'm pleased to see we've been able to award pay awards of 7% to both police officers and police staff for this financial year. And as a result of those challenges, we're undertaking a number of key pieces of work to address that budget shortfall just now. That includes, you will have seen, I'm sure, a current freeze on police staff recruitment, a review of a number of our organisational structures, including a review of our executive structures. We've had the introduction of a revised road policing model, and we're also currently piloting a proportionate investigation of crime within our North East Division. In Division in Forth Valley and across this local authority, I and my senior command team are reviewing our operating model and how we might best mitigate and address some of the demand that's coming in, given the pressure on resource. And on top of that, we're currently assessing what the financial position will be as we move into pre-budget scrutiny for the next financial year. We have recently provided a submission to the Justice Committee in terms of their pre-budget scrutiny, and effectively what we have calculated is that if we are to move forward with a flat cash settlement and with an indicative 2% pay award, we would be looking at a further reduction in headcount of around about 600 officers and 200 police staff. And if that were to continue over the next 3 to 4 years, there's a potential we'd be looking at a circa 2,000 headcount reduction in relation to the officer and staff headcount within the organisation. So I introduced that only to I suppose, give the current operating context within which we find ourselves now. The report we're about to covers the last financial year, and as you'll see, Lindsay will be able to describe I think a positive return on performance. Really, given the challenging operating environment in which they are operating, the staff and officers across Falkirk have performed exceptionally well over that period. But given that, as I said, that we are only here annually, I'm happy to take questions on both the report and any elements of that kind of wider strategic context. So if it's okay, I'll ask Lindsay to pick up and cover off the report.
That's fine, thank you.
Good morning, convener. Good morning, councillors. As the Chief Super said, I'm Chief Inspector Lindsay Kidden. I'm the current area commander for Falkirk, and it's a pleasure to be here this morning to present the report from the 1st of April 2022 to the 31st of March 2023. It is quite a lengthy and detailed report, but I would also caveat that it is a snapshot in time in terms of the performance at Falkirk, and certainly doesn't necessarily give an accurate impression of the significant volume of what we deal with in Falkirk, particularly in terms of vulnerability and the increasing challenges that we face around about mental health that we continue to address with our partners. So there is obviously some key highlights under each of the priority areas. I don't intend to go through those exhaustively, but rather to just tease out some of the sort of key highlights from the report, and again content to take any questions once I have gone through the report. So under the first priority area, which is responsive to the concerns of our communities, the first one I really wanted to pick out was Falkirk Town Centre. But you'll see from the report there that in March this year, we did see a high profile number of assaults in public space and antisocial behaviour in the town centre, and our Falkirk community policing team took a really a close grip in terms of the issues that they were presented with there, and worked closely in partnership with Falkirk Council CCTV, the British Transport Police, and put in place a sort of multifaceted approach in terms of how we dealt with that. So that saw us increase our high visibility patrols in the town centre. We carried out joint patrols with Go Youth Trust, who are referenced within the report. It's a third sector agency who engage with youths. We had some additional inputs in our schools by our school beat officers to encourage that level of engagement with young people. And we also, it's later referenced in the report, we advertised the twilight football as well as a really effective diversionary activity for our youths. So we have started to see a really downward trend in terms of antisocial behaviour in the town centre, and the methodology that we've applied to this continues to yield successes now, and it's one that we're looking to adopt in other parts of Falkirk where we also have antisocial behaviour issues. So a really positive example of partnership working there. The next example I just wanted to tease out under this priority area is the Falkirk Community Alcohol Partnership. Again, the intention of the Community Alcohol Partnership is really to bring together local partnerships, the police, retailers, schools, health providers, etc., to reduce alcohol harm among our young people and ultimately improve their health and well-being and enhance our communities. So there's a number of ways in which that is tackled through educational pieces, enforcement and engagement with retailers around about best practice. And again, the activity within that particular piece of work has started to see a real drop-off in terms of reports of illicit youth drinking. So again, really effective bit of partnership working, and it continues into this reporting period as well. I did also just want to briefly mention the reference in the report under this priority area for off-road bikes. I am aware there has been a number of calls in relation to this, and it has had a community impact, I think it's fair to say. Again, our community officers at Falkirk have done a significant amount of work in terms of engagement, intelligence development, and have successfully seized a number of off-road bikes in the area, which has culminated in reports to the Procurator Fiscal, and really grateful to see a really strong and positive response to some of the social media appeals that we put out for information. As I'm sure you'll appreciate, we rely heavily on that community intelligence and engagement from elected members as well. So whilst off-road bikes continues to be a problem, we are continuing with that enforcement activity. Under the next priority area, which is enhancing our collective resilience to emerging threats, I just wanted to mention the entry about stolen vehicles and probably more to highlight the cross-divisional challenge that this has presented and the organised nature in which the suspects and the now accused have been involved in relation to this one. So this related to a number and a series of commercial and domestic housebreakings which occurred at the end of December last year, where a number of vehicles were stolen, 2 of which were subsequently recovered in the Falkirk area, and 4 suspects were identified and subsequently arrested and charged and are now on remand pending trial in relation to that. So some really good work by our priority crime team in terms of their investigation into the circumstances of this, which spanned multiple policing divisions and involved an organised crime group from the Lothian area. And I just wanted to highlight that when we do see trends like this in our area, we do augment our policing response to that in a number of ways in terms of trying to prevent any future housebreakings, and that includes activities like enhancing our patrol matrix, so our officers are really targeted in where they choose to patrol. We circulate lists of stolen vehicles, so every officer in our area knows which vehicles are outstanding, which clearly in this set of circumstances led to the recovery of 2. And we also bring in specialist resources as well, just to augment our policing response, whether that's road policing officers or dog handlers as well, into key hotspot areas. As well as seeking the support of our Safer Communities team, who put out quite a bit of preventative advice both online and through our local newspapers, as well as carrying out crime prevention surveys with victims of housebreakings, where they can offer some advice around about target hardening and how they can make their premises more secure. You will obviously see at the back of the report that our housebreaking figures are impacted, and there has been a rise, and I attribute that, whilst not wholly but partially, to the criminal activity that we've seen there. But thankfully, we've had a really good detection in respect to that one. The next section in priority is protecting people most at risk of harm. And I just wanted to pick out again the Falkirk Safer Streets partnership. Again, a really well-established partnership arrangement between Police Scotland, Scottish Ambulance Service, the Council, and our Scottish Fire and Rescue Service colleagues, which continues to be really successful in terms of addressing our Falkirk nighttime economy, and continues into this reporting period as well. But just to mention that is well established and continues to be really successful and a good example of us working in partnership. The next area I just wanted to bring out is again just to highlight the really good work of the Falkirk Divisional Alcohol and Violence Reduction Unit, or as they are routinely known as our DAVRU. This is a specialist department who work within my command area, who primarily investigate domestic abuse crimes, and you'll see from the report that between April 2022 to November 2022, they've had active involvement in 175 domestic incidents, which led to 129 domestic perpetrators being charged. So they are a really integral part of my command area. We clearly take domestic abuse really, really seriously, and it's a crime type that in particular I review every morning, and it is actioned as a priority to our DAVRU team and investigated really thoroughly. And whilst we are investigating that to bring perpetrators to justice, we also seek to put a real focus on how we safeguard our victims as well. And we seek the support of our domestic abuse safeguarding team to ensure basic things like victims have mobile phones to contact police, that we have alarms fitted to their addresses where it's appropriate to do so. And we also information share through our vulnerable persons database with key statutory partners across social work, women's aid, etc., to make sure the right support, etc., is in place. So I just wanted to highlight that particular dedicated team deal with on a daily basis a high volume of domestic abuse, and they do so very robustly, and it's very, very victim focused and trauma informed in terms of our approach. The last section within that priority area, I just wanted to highlight again, just to demonstrate the continued joined up approach, is around about our approach to asylum seeking, the asylum seeking population rather in Falkirk, where we continue to work closely with Mears Housing and the Home Office. We've had really regular engagement and well-established relationships there, which I think has had a really positive impact in terms of how we've integrated asylum seekers into the community, which thankfully has seen very few incidents reported in Falkirk. So that engagement continues. The next priority area is promoting confidence through our actions, and again, just wanted to pick out, I know I've referenced it briefly already, but the Bainsford and Langley's Community Action Plan, which again is in partnership with Falkirk Council, the Cora Foundation and our Scottish Fire and Rescue Service colleagues, which has saw the introduction of the Twilight Football Project, which runs on a Friday night in Falkirk, and has been really a really excellent intervention in terms of our ability to engage with young people, keep them engaged and divert them away from perhaps other activities like antisocial behaviour. So that is continuing really well into this reporting period as well. Final section is road safety and road crime. And whilst the information in the report is as read, I did just want to pick out the statistics under the road policing unit section, which clearly it's fair to say that one fatality is always one too many. However, you'll see from this reporting period we are seeing a reduction of 7 from the previous year, with overall fatalities in Forth Valley Division falling by 67%. Our serious injury collision stats have also shown a similar downward trend and a reduction of 13%. And that's similar across the slight injury collisions as well, with a slightly smaller margin, but nonetheless a 6% reduction across that as well, which I think is a positive indication. That leads us on to the statistics which feature at the back of the report, which are broken down by each of the groupings. So again, I won't exhaustively go through these, but just we'll touch on a few highlights, and I'm happy to take any questions on these at the end. So You'll see under Group 1 crime, violence, disorder and antisocial behaviour, reassuringly, our total crimes of violence have reduced by 7.4%. Our serious assaults have also come down quite considerably by 42.7%, and our assault detection rate is up by 17.1%. A similar picture across common assaults, with a reduction in number by 14.6% and a slight increase in terms of detection rate as well. Over the page, onto page 38, you'll see the domestic abuse figures as well, which are showing a similar downward trend in terms of the number of incidents, the total crimes, and the percentage that result in a crime being recorded, all showing a downward trend. I did want to pick up on line 19, which relates to hate crime and offence detection rate, which you will see there is a reduction in 6.5% in terms of our detection rate. Again, just wanted to probably take the opportunity to highlight that we take hate crime exceptionally seriously, and it is monitored closely and on a daily basis by me as area commander, and is subject to that a level of additional scrutiny. I also have my community inspectors across Falkirk and Grangemouth to take specific ownership of hate crime portfolios for their area and provide that additional layer of scrutiny and governance before a crime is ever closed, to make sure that every line of inquiry has been exhausted in respect of that. And I closely monitor any patterns or trends in respect of hate crime using the support of analysts within the division. So if we have somebody who is either a repeat victim, or we have repeat locations where hate crime is occurring, that's something that we look to increase our intervention and prevention activity around, whether that's additional educational pieces in our schools via our SBOs, perhaps high visibility patrols in specific problematic areas, or indeed increasing our online campaigns around about hate crime. So it was just to really highlight that it is taken really seriously, whilst it does show that dip in detection rate. On to page 40, I have touched on theft by housebreaking already, where you will see there is some slight increases for all the reasons that I spoke about earlier. And I think notably as well, our public protection and sexual crime all showing a fairly marked reduction. In terms of sexual crimes reducing by 25.2% and detection rate increasing by 10.7% in the report as well. In a similar picture, as I've mentioned already, across road traffic casualty statistics. So those were the key highlights that I wanted to bring out, and that really concludes my overview of the report. If there's any questions, thank you.
Thanks very much, Lizzie, for that synopsis of this excellent report. Is there any questions from councillors? Councillor Aitchison?
Yeah, thanks, Convener, and thank you, Lindsay, for a very full, comprehensive report. It was excellent. Throughout the report, reference is made to the collaborative work between Police Scotland and the local authority. Can you describe the support and partnership between the local police and the council, please?
So it probably cuts across a number of different areas. I think for me, in terms of the local authority, are heavily involved in the community safety group. So we have there's sort of 3 tiers to this. We've got a weekly operational community safety group, and we have a 6-weekly tactical group, which our local authority partners are involved in. And the purpose of that is to jointly review emerging trends and issues within the Falkirk area, and identify where there's perhaps joint and collaborative opportunities where we can address that. So antisocial behaviour is probably the most obvious one. So if there's a particular trend in Falkirk that relates to antisocial behaviour, and it perhaps is involved in a domestic dwelling, for example, the conflict resolution team within the local authority would be able to give us some support and intervention in terms of how we might deal with that. And we identify those patterns and apply the right level of resourcing to that, our weekly operational meeting and our 6 weekly tactical one in terms of how we address some of those issues. So that's probably the key way in which we work together.
Councillor Binney.
Thank you, Convener. I just want to say thank you, Lindsay, for a very detailed performance report. I know all the good work that is already taking place and also the challenges you face at the moment and also the resource reductions that is being assessed at present. However, I do have a question. On page 12, it states responsive to the concerns of communities, and I appreciate this is a snapshot of time only to the 31st of March, but I do have to ask, with regard resource, is there community police officers available and resourced enough to attend important community meetings when asked? As it's come to my attention, several of my groups and the community were unable to obtain a community police officer to attend. I know perhaps that's been after March, and I do appreciate that. Can you maybe explain the reason for that, please? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. I think probably what I would start by saying is that I really value the attendance at community council meetings, and I recognise the importance of that engagement firsthand with communities in terms of what some of their challenges and issues are, and therefore how important it is to make sure that our community officers are attending and are represented at those. Whilst I don't have the details of the specifics around what you refer to in respect to that non-attendance, I'm happy to take that away and have a look at it. Albeit what I would also say is that sometimes when community council meetings are scheduled, if there is something that's happening in the community, which is perhaps an emergency or an immediate call that we need to attend to and address, that would probably always take precedence, because that public safety piece has to be our priority. Whilst I don't know what the specifics are of the non-attendance that you refer to, Councillor, that would be one reason for perhaps why that has happened.
Thank you for that. I'll send you those details if that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, can I add to that? Councillor Bennett, I think it's probably fair to say that, just as Lindsay says, and I will echo how important, the value we place on our community teams or community officers and having that identifiable resource in communities. But really, I suppose I need to be clear and frank around about the choices that we are having to make. And the reality is, moving forward, regular and routine attendance is going to be a challenge. So often, in terms of managing that emergency response piece, Lindsay's community teams are being abstracted, and that is unfortunately becoming a more regular occurrence. One I'm seeking to avoid as far as I possibly can, but just to provide a bit of, I suppose, cover for Lindsay, that these are decisions I'm taking, division wide, and as much as we will seek to maximise that attendance over the course of the next year with that resource challenge, then I would ask for that forbearance that it will become challenging at times to service that in the way that we might otherwise wish.
Thanks, Barry. Good. Sorry, Councillor Forrest.
I've actually got two, but I'll ask them one at a time. Okay. Appendix 2, our page 44, you mentioned about the domestic abuse. I note from the report that it states that the target for domestic abuse initial bail checks should be conducted within 24 hours, and that should be 95%. Last year, 21-22, it was 90.3, and this year it's dropped further down to 83.9. That's 7% drop since last year. Can you explain what the reason for that is? Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor, for the question. Quite rightly have highlighted that there is a reduction there. In terms of the domestic abuse compliance, as you've rightly highlighted, that should be communicated to a victim within a 24-hour period. There is a number of factors which can impact on whether or not that happens. Sometimes what we find is that whilst a domestic incident has been reported to us, the victim may have been hostile either from the onset or potentially has become hostile as the investigations progressed. And so when officers attempt to re-engage, it can become quite challenging to actually meet them face to face to verbally deliver those conditions. So that's but one factor, it's not the only factor, but that could have an impact on our success in terms of that compliance and our ability to contact victims as well. Can also have an impact as well as what the Chief Super's alluded to as wider resourcing challenges as well. When we've got immediate incidents which are occurring, they'll always take precedence over a bail compliance check, and that's some of the really aggressive challenges that we're dealing with just now in terms of resourcing.
Do you think 95% maybe set a wee bit high then given those circumstances, which are always going to be there?
I think when we're dealing with domestic abuse and how seriously we take that, I think that we should absolutely be aiming to deliver our conditions, as many as we possibly can within the 24-hour period. So I probably don't think that 95% is too high, because of the focus on victims. But equally, it does present an additional challenge for us in terms of the resourcing profile that we face.
I understand that. Thank you. My second question was Appendix 2, page 45, hour 45. Housebreaking, shoplifting, robbery incidents are up while the detection rates are down. Can you give us a wee bit explanation on that one as well, please?
Thanks, Councillor. So I think to start with the housebreaking increases, obviously I alluded to that specific set of circumstances within the report where we've got challenges of cross-divisional and organised crime coming into our area, which is affecting our housebreaking figures. I think the other impact factor that we need to be aware of, and this probably cuts across housebreakings and shoplifting, is the societal pressures around about cost of living, and the acquisitive crime has naturally seen a bit of an increase in terms of that. So I think that will account for those increases, but equally, as I said before, we're really responsive to that as well in terms of how we augment our policing plan when we see patterns like that in the area, where we make sure that we've got bespoke patrol matrices in place for our officers to patrol hotspot areas. We bring specialist resources in as well, such as our road policing colleagues to support and augment our policing plan. We make sure that officers are fully briefed on key information regarding any suspect descriptions or outstanding stolen vehicles, so that when they're out patrolling, they know exactly what they're looking for and when. And we also seek to put out additional information when it's relevant to do so through our Safer Communities department. So we'll put out crime prevention advice on social media channels, into our local newspapers. We'll talk about it in our community council meetings and in other community groups that police go along to as well, to make sure we're getting the right messaging out there where we see those crime trends as well. And notwithstanding, obviously, the investigative part, which is really robust, but relies quite heavily on forensic opportunities for us. And as you'll appreciate, the types of individuals who commit a housebreaking crime are quite sophisticated and organised, and they know how to navigate forensic opportunities. So they'll wear gloves. CCTV opportunities are there, but often they're masked as well. So that presents additional challenges for us in terms of detection rates. But that's a sort of an overview of the type of response that we give to housebreaking, recognising that it obviously has gone up.
Thank you for your report. Very concise, as were your answers to the questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Redmond.
Thanks. Just a couple of questions. I should start by just saying well done. Doing some great work. Quite like this page, but it shows you what every individual officer's been working on. Over, you've got Alan Blythe, we've got Lindsay Scott and things as well, and they're all doing, we'll not read them all out, but they're all doing some fantastic individual stuff and using their own initiative, which is really good. One of the first questions I had was just about, obviously we've had dirt bikes going through our parks and things, and we had, I think it was Lanarkshire sent over a special quad bike unit. Are we going to be able to invest in our own quad bike unit? or is that maybe something?
So that's not something I would be seeking to do. So again, the luxury, not the luxury, but the value of being part of a national organisation is that's an asset that can be deployed as and when we require it. So it's that capability. We have off-road bikes, we have quad bikes, we have a multitude of resources that we would call off on. But organisationally, given the financial context I've just described, it will be for us to call off on that as and when we need it. And as you say, we've done that, we've used it effectively, and we'll continue to do that as and when we require to do it.
Thanks. It's just quite interesting, and thanks for sending us the other day in your email about the written submission to the Justice Committee, because I noticed in that as well. And one of the reasons I asked this question was that the capital plans indicate that Police Scotland requires £548 million for capital investment over the next 5 years. But there's only 250 million being provided, so we've got a 298 million shortfall. This represents serious risk to investing in a new fleet and a green fleet, investing in training and ICT equipment, which is going to help us tackle cybercrime and things going forward. How do you think this is going to affect us going forward? Are we going to see a reduction in things, or is it just going to be we're not going to have new investment, so our vehicles are going to be older, or would you see a reduction in the actual size of the police fleet in the Falkirk area?
So that was honestly the reason for introducing that in my opening remarks. Then if the budget settlement is as has been described, if we were to continue getting a budget allocated on a flat cash basis, then there absolutely will be reductions.
Right.
So we've seen the reduction over the past year of 600. We are currently evaluating what our officer numbers might need to be in order to bring ourselves in on budget this year. So there might need to be further reductions within year. But certainly as part of the pre-budget work we're doing, there is that assessment that we are likely to need to reduce by a further 600 or thereabouts should we receive a flat cash settlement. So that's on the revenue and resource side. On the capital side, as you describe, it exactly means that. It means we're not able to upgrade and effectively repair some of the buildings that we have, and we recognise some of them are far from optimal in terms of the standard that they currently sit. It will impact our fleet because we will not be able to upgrade and renew. So the reality of that is we will need to run our fleet longer. Our fleet currently is in a relatively good space, particularly across Falkirk and Forth Valley. It's pretty good at the moment. But that won't remain, because we won't be able to invest and renew that. So that these are the type of risks that we inevitably will run, and that plays into attendance at community meetings. It plays into our ability to comply with 95% in terms of detection rates, and albeit the performance report we're speaking about is to the end of the last financial year. I have published the information on Q1, and if you've seen that, the performance that's already playing through. I'm seeing, you actually see it in this report here. If you break it down, there's elements of a proactivity, that we would otherwise be doing that we're not currently able to do. And my sense is that will become more challenging over the next year as well. So that will continue to play through, and hence we're making what I feel is a necessary representation to make sure that policing is funded appropriately in order that we hopefully don't see those scenarios emerge.
I think I agree with you. It is important that we fund policing appropriately, and it is just based on flat cash. We might get more going forward, but it would be good to keep pushing that. And as you said, it was over 5 years. It might be a reduction of 2,000 officers, and I think I wrote it down. It would take us down to nationally would be 14,413 officers, so that would be a historic low. So how many officers do we have in the Forth Valley region, and what effect do you think that would have, a reduction?
So for operational reasons, we don't speak about the specific numbers in any one area, but there's also I suppose a more conflated reason for that is because it isn't just the officers that are under my command or Lindsay's command. I've spoke about the officers that we're able to draw off on. So we have specialist departments both in division and out with. So it's not as formulaic as to say there are X numbers of officers in Forth Valley, because on any given day there'll be officers from Roads Policing Division, from Crime Division, from our Operational Support Division, from all of our divisions operating within and out with the area. What the reality of all that is, though, as I've said, that proportionately we will see that reduction impact on the number of officers collectively that are able to respond to policing problems in the area, and hence I say, as I said in my opening remarks, we're working really hard to look at the demand. What demand are we facing currently, and as I spoke about when I introduced the policing plan, a lot of that relates to vulnerability. A lot of that relates to the time and space that we occupy dealing with mental health crisis, and so we really need to work. I am working closely, Lindsay's working closely with partners to try and reduce the amount of time our officers are having to deal with issues that might otherwise be dealt with other services and other professionals, in order that we can maximise the resource that we have available to us.
Thanks. And that's good. I appreciate that. And I suppose in the council, they'll know better than us how difficult things can be.
And I suppose it's only right as well to put on record, just in terms of the partnership working in that, how grateful we are for the support that we do get, because again, we have additional resource in Falkirk Area Command under our school-based officers, and that's a direct result of the contribution that the Falkirk Council makes. So it's only right I put on record my gratitude for that.
Oh, thank you. So my final question was, Appendix 2, pages 27-29, the local policing plan priority, enhancing our collective resilience to emerging threats, sets out 5 areas of action: serious organised crime, cybercrime, drug misuse, counter-terrorism, and planning for emergencies. Counter-terrorism is not referred to in this report. Can senior officers provide an update on the work of Police Scotland at local level in implementing counter-terrorism measures? Thanks.
Yep. So again, that's multifaceted and something that we do not just as a single organisation, but something we do in partnership under the Prevent strategy. So we have within our Community Safety Prevention Interventions Department officers who specialise on that, but they work hand in hand with partners and with industry to make sure that we're properly prepared, that people understand what that threat is and what a response to it should be. So there's a I suppose a network of activity that goes on under the kind of wider context strategy, and it's something that if members are interested in, we could actually bring a bit more detailed update to a scrutiny. We could actually get a presentation on that kind of work, if that would be something that was felt worthwhile.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea, actually. Thanks a lot. That's all my questions now.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Redmond. Is there anyone else got in? No, particular. Can I first of all just add to what Jack was saying about police cuts and that? I understand we're already got problems having police out on areas where speeding's happening that we can't get MD out. I had a local ward incident where there'd been a few accidents, and we were told that we can't get any police out because of the cuts to your manpower. Is that correct?
So without knowing the specifics of the incident, my overall general answer to that is no, that's not correct, because we will continue to respond to priorities, and particularly where we're seeing accidents and accident hotspots, then that's exactly the type of stuff we will continue to prioritise. So there will be challenges to our service, but we will absolutely respond to accident hotspots. We'll absolutely respond to community-based priorities. However, we won't be able to do that, all of the time. So for speeding's a good example where I would like to see, as far as possible, where we have speeding issues, that we try and design them out, we try and educate them out, because asking Lindsay's community teams to provide an officer on an ad hoc basis to stand with a speeding gun, it has an initial deterrent at that time, and it lasts for, the value of that dissipates over a very short period of time. So where we see accident hotspots, and we do that analysis, and again through the community safety and the road safety element of that, we should be looking as far as possible to design that out, to see, is there anything we can do in terms of the road infrastructure, driver behaviour, education, because actually an officer with a speed gun is of very limited and time specific value, so but the short answer is that can't be correct in the round, because we will respond, but we will need to prioritise, and the level of response and how often that can be done is clearly going to be impacted by the challenges I've described.
That's great, thanks, Barry. Maybe speak to Leslie about that sometime later. In Appendix 1, page 16, the report outlines 3 risks and threats in the Falkirk area for the Forth Valley Division. Two of these are direct reference to drug use and drug-related deaths and criminality associated with the drugs. My question's got kind of three parts there. First, on drug-related deaths, realising you can't be too specific, are there particular postcodes within the Falkirk area where we have a major drug problem? And perhaps we'll be working together with relevant staff, we could help to stamp it out.
Thanks, Councillor. I wouldn't have information in front of me just now that would lend itself to an answer around about that. But what I would say is that drug use and drug related deaths are you know, they're a national issue, and it's a national public health issue. And we do, you know, we rely in terms of that enforcement, but we rely really heavily on that community engagement in order that we can develop enough information and intelligence to allow us to take the right sort of enforcement activity. And obviously, in terms of how we work in partnership, well, we do that really effectively already through our drugs partnership forums that exist within Falkirk, where we're working really closely with our public health colleagues in the NHS. We've obviously got third sector organisations as well. We've got Forth Valley Transform, organisations like Change, Grow, Live, who support people's recovery from drug addiction. So whilst as police officers are one of our primary roles is one of enforcement, what we're also really mindful to do is that when we come into contact with somebody who is a abuser, we make sure that we refer them on to the right support agencies as well, so that they're getting that level of support to recover. And that can also be when, you know, if we're executing voluntary in the local area, we bring our Transform Forth Valley colleagues with us as well, and it's to demonstrate that it's not just about enforcement, because we recognise that won't solve the problem, but we bring them with us, and anybody that we come into contact with, we signpost them on the day to agencies like Change, Grow, Live and Transform Forth Valley. We also formally record vulnerability concerns to our vulnerable persons database, and what that does is it's a database that we use to then share vulnerabilities and concerns with key statutory partners, again to make sure that individuals who are vulnerable to drug use are getting the right wraparound and the right support that's available to them. So yes, lots of stuff we do in partnership in terms of how we tackle drugs, but probably not one specific area that's more prevalent. I think it's you know, it's
general folk.
Yes.
Very good. The second part is, are you informed when the ambulance service or other bodies use naloxone? No, we're talking around that. You get informed, you know, if there's the ambulance turns up and they have to use the naloxone, do you get informed of that?
So certainly if ambulance have attended an incident and we are also in attendance, then we would become aware if clearly naloxone had been administered. As you're aware, police officers now routinely carry naloxone as well. So we have specialist training to administer it where it's appropriate to do so. But we wouldn't routinely be informed, for instance, that we're not directly involved in. But if we're there, then we would, yes.
So basically, it's no mandatory for the ambulance to report an opioid overdose to you? No. Have you got any idea of the number of times you've used it in the force?
We'll certainly have figures on it, but there's not figures that I've certainly got to hand, but we're happy. It's useful to come back to you with that.
Be obliged if you can do that for me. It'd be good to know the number that actually people who have been, their lives have been saved by using it. And although it's saving lives in the short term, we really need, as you were saying earlier, we need to provide proper rehabilitation, mental health facilities, because we're only putting it off to another day if we don't do that. But thanks very much for that, and I'll look forward to getting these figures if you can get them for me.
No problem.
Thanks again. Anyone else? No? Shall we move on?
Maybe just before we move on though, convener, just to double check. So the committee, I think, are happy to agree with the report, but I think there was an offer made by Chief Superintendent Blair that maybe do a presentation at some point on counter-terrorism.
So I suppose I'll probably further that offer, and I'll leave you to consider it. But I am conscious we do come here once a year to report on the annual report, and as I've described in my comments, that things are changing at pace. We're already through Q1 data, so if the committee was so minded, I'd be happy to come back, to report on half-yearly stats to provide you a bit more currency and give you the opportunity. But I'll leave that with you to take away, consider in terms of the committee and how that operates. But certainly, if you let us know when and how you would like us to come back, either just specifically on that subject for presentation or to provide maybe half-yearly an input, then I'm happy to do that for you.
I think the matter of the reporting frequency is something that's been discussed, so we can maybe leave that one hanging just now, but we can have a discussion whether.
Okay, thanks very much.
When they offer the presentation.
Would it maybe be possible to put in it? The committee would like to highlight its concerns around funding going forward for Police Scotland.
This report's about performance,
right,
and
what effect that would have.
So it's,
I don't know. It's up to you. I just thought.
I think it'll be clear into the question and the responses in a minute. That would be a clear thing. And yeah, are we happy with that?
Happy with that? Agree the report?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you very much to both of you for coming today.
Thank you very much. Thank you. See, that's right, eh?
Right, Councillor Benny, we're just changing the guard, so to speak. So the next report, convener, is again by the Director of Transformation in Communities and Corporate Services, and it again encloses a performance report. This time it's by the Fire and Rescue Service. I should correct myself that I said these reports were required through the Police Scotland Act, which is not correct. It's the Police and Fire Reform Scotland Act 2012, just in case anybody wanted to pick me up on that. So cover report, again, I don't think there's any point in going through what's in the report. It just sets out the basis for the performance report. So I think with that said, we'd ask the Area Commander, William Pollard, just to give his overview. I think we'll just both start. Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks for inviting me along to present this report from our performance based on the 1st of April 22 to the 31st of March 23. Like my Police Scotland colleagues, I'd like, if I may, just to provide a wee bit of strategic overview, and I'm conscious that our local plan is now due for review. The Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Fire Board have made the decision to postpone the development of the new local fire and rescue plans. As you'll no doubt be aware, the Fire and Rescue Service, like all public bodies, is facing a financial challenge and operational circumstances which that may affect. As a result of that, we've developed a package of change proposals to address both the financial situation and as a backstop to looking at our resourcing versus the risks within the community and trying to make that as appropriate as it needs to be. There's been a number of measures that have taken place at the minute, which has included a temporary withdrawal of 10 appliances across Scotland and a reduction and redistribution of high reach appliances, none of which have affected the Falkirk area. However, we need to make further changes in the years to come, and we'll be consulting on the proposals to make permanent changes in the next year, and therefore we don't feel that we can at this point ask you to consider what those local priorities are and may be with that change that may follow. In the meantime, we are completing a review of our local fire and rescue plans, and we'll be able to share those reports probably nearer the end of the year, and that will be used to inform our options development for the changes to the service next year, and that will also include key stakeholders, including local authorities, yourself, and committees such as this as part of that decision making and development process. We would anticipate once we've completed those options, as I say, there'll be full public consultations at that point, and we'd be in a position to revise the local plans once we have that knowledge. As always, the safety of our communities and our staff is always at the heart of what we do within the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. In terms of the key report, the report sets out our performance against the 7 priorities within the current local fire plan. These are local risk management and preparedness, domestic fire safety, deliberate fire setting, non-domestic fire safety, road safety, unintentional harm and unwanted fire alarm signals. And these are measured over our 7 key performance indicators. Out of the 7 key performance indicators, one area is higher than previous years, which is accidental dwelling fires. Casualties, where there's been an increase in 2 compared to last year, but it's still a reduction over 2020-21. The number of dwelling fires has reduced along with deliberate fires, and non-RTC road traffic collision casualties has a decrease as well. And we'll cover these in a wee bit more detail shortly. These are out of 2,619 incidents we attended within Falkirk, which is an increase of about 160 over the last reporting year. In terms of sort of major events that we've been involved in, crews from the Falkirk area responded to the devastating Jenners fire in Edinburgh, both directly to the incident and with additional support roles to maintain fire cover throughout the area. And that was quite demanding on our business as usual and our activities at that point in time. And local crews are continuing to work with businesses and partners to ensure that our risk preparedness is in a place it needs to be, and that includes multi-agency exercising, such as the coma sites and the things that are on our doorstep within our community here. Accidental dwelling fires. So overall, we've seen a reduction of about 30% compared to previous years, with the most significant reduction being in Q4. 66 of these incidents originate in the kitchen, and 29% are being attributed to a distraction or falling asleep. 13% involved drug and alcohol use, and 27% involved persons over 65. The most sort of worrying statistic really is that 36 of these incidents still had no working smoke alarm present, which is something that we strive to try and reduce. As a result of that, we've carried out 936 home fire safety visits within the Falkirk area, and 32 of that were to persons we consider to be at higher risk. And as a net result, we've fitted 677 smoke detectors within that area. The legislation's changed, and as highlighted in the appendix to the report, it's now a legal obligation for most dwellings to have smoke detectors fitted. However, that does not mean that our home fire safety visit campaign is any less important as a result of that legislative change. So if you're a landlord, you should be fitting them for your tenants, etc. But the messaging that we give and the community advice that we give is probably more important, or just as important as that smoke detector. So there's always a plea for us that referral pathway and home fire safety visits are still encouraged and still carried out. In terms of accidental fire casualties, we've seen a slight increase in casualties compared to previous years, although any increase is certainly terrible for the occupants, and certainly any casualties would try and reduce. There has been, sadly, 1 reported fire fatality within that reporting year. A review of that incident has been carried out, and learning has been identified and progressed through, and it pertained mainly to the referral pathway. And again, that's opened up further dialogue with our partner agencies to ensure that we're all cited where there is vulnerable in the community, and that all agencies are bringing what they can to support that individual and reduce that risk where we can. As a result of some of that, our frontline staff or crews which are out in the community have submitted 98 adult protection referrals to our partner agencies for those who we've identified to be more at risk within the community. Our community action team are working with organisations to support those most affected by the cost of living crisis by replacing unsafe electrical equipment, providing water bottles and fire retardant bedding to try and reduce that risk further. Funding, however, for these initiatives remains a challenge, and I would encourage that partnership approach to support all these events because they are pivotal to reduce that risk within the vulnerable in the community. As an organisation, we've received 129 referrals from partner organisations, providing us the opportunity to reduce that risk to those most vulnerable. As I said earlier, we continue to offer home fire safety advice and conduct post-fire incident activities to the immediate communities affected by a fire where that's occurred. However, the referral pathway is the most pivotal process for us to get to the most vulnerable in the community. We have several campaigns, one of which is highlighted in the appendix, which I would just like to draw your attention to, which is Make the Call campaign, and that encourages carers, support workers, anybody who has access to or works with anybody vulnerable in the community to make the call to the fire service so we can come and offer advice and support and carry out that risk reduction and give them advice. And those referrals are, as I say, are pivotal to us targeting those that are most vulnerable in the community. In terms of deliberate fires continue to be an issue. However, they have shown a decrease of about 5.7%. The majority of these incidents have involved outdoor structures, wheelie bins and refuse. So again, whilst we can be proactive with our partner agencies and police through the various forums that we have, there's still an issue around that. There is options that we have as an organisation where we can get locks for wheelie bins, etc. But these are specific initiatives which will be targeted through key areas which come back through the community. Engagement is also taking place with the education programmes which we have, in particular at this time of the year and this time last year where we had to build up the bonfire night, and that education piece going into the community schools still takes place and is still getting undertaken by our community action teams and our local crews as well, because it's important that they have involvement in that piece. In terms of non-domestic fires, so these are normally business and commercial premises. Although the number of incidents is relatively low, being 64, there has been a decrease of about 6 incidents. These are mainly pertaining to garages, sheds. However, they are containing in public buildings and prisons, which account for the majority of the non-domestic fires that we attend. Again, where deliberate ignition has been determined, those are investigated by our fire investigation teams and in conjunction with Police Scotland to support that. Where there is trends within non-domestic fires, then we seek to take on and analyse some of that trend work and target specific areas through our fire safety enforcement teams, who will then go out and audit these premises following a fire to try and reduce that risk further. As part of that pre-programmed fire safety workload, we've audited 113 premises and carried out 24 post-audit fires, which is where the further incident we will then go in and examine what their fire risk assessment looks like, etc., and have their policies been in place. Currently, we've no enforcement notices live within the Falkirk area. However, we do have 2 prohibition notices which are still live and have been served on premises within the area, and that just means that legally they can't use a specific area or a specific purpose of the building. In terms of the special services, so we report on 2 facets to this. We consider the road traffic collision casualties, and we also consider non-road traffic collision casualties. So the road traffic collision casualties are showing a 5% decrease compared to the previous years. Of the 36 reported casualties we have, which I acknowledge will differ slightly from Police Scotland's reports, because obviously there's incidents that they will attend that we will not. 19 of those casualties had slight injuries. We dealt with 1 fatality, and there was 14 of those 36 that required to be rescued by the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. We continue to support all the local road safety initiatives and the wider national road safety strategy to reduce that number further where we can. In terms of non-road traffic collision casualties, these have decreased by 10 when compared to the previous years. The majority of these casualties are a result of assisting other agencies. So quite a bit of our work now is involving supporting the Scottish Ambulance Service and Police Scotland by forcing entry to premises where there is someone at risk or vulnerable within that who requires assistance. And that's the majority of these calls which are coming in now. Responding in partnership with other agencies over and above the forcing entry element, so these are considering medical assist calls and other such incidents are on the increase as well. And we're currently looking at how we can collaboratively work together to try and reduce that risk, and that's a piece of work that we're looking at from the Falkirk area now. In terms of sort of drowning prevention, both the organisation and locally we support the Scottish Government's National Drowning Prevention Strategy, and as part of our summer thematic action plans, we worked with the operational crews to identify what are safety hotspots and created action plans on the back end of that. One, to do a risk reduction measure at the outset, but also so our preparedness was there, and the knowledge and the intelligence that we had on responding to that risk should we need to was all present and there with our operational crews. We also supported the National Drowning Prevention Day, which took place at the Helix Park in Falkirk, which was quite a successful event, and it seems to be an annual event now at that location, which is welcomed. In terms of unwanted fire alarm signals, following an increase in both Q2 and Q3, we're now starting to see that decline again in Q4 with 5% less incidents than previous years. It's worth noting that as of 1st of July this year, our response model changed to unwanted fire alarm signals, where we do not attend automatic fire alarm calls. So these are calls that are made from commercial and business premises from a collector service. So, for example, building has a fire alarm system, someone's monitoring that system. So where that call comes in from that centre, we'll call, challenge it to ask if there's been any indicators of fire or anybody's done an investigation on the back end of that. If there is no obvious sign of fire and that investigation is either concluded or they are unsure, then we are not attending those premises. However, this does not extend to any sleeping risks. So if there is a sleeping risk, such as a hospital, a hotel, a care home, that still receives the full attendance that it always has, and there's no reduction in that. The early indicators of this programme has been really successful in driving down our attendance and freeing up capacity within our operational crews in order to undertake some of that other activity we've described. And again, reducing that impact on businesses as well, which is quite an important thing. So no longer are they having to wait on us going to say, it's a toaster or it's a false alarm activation and you can now go back in the building. So it's freed up a wee bit of time and capacity for them, as well as reducing that road risk to our crews, which was quite pivotal. We do, however, continue to engage with duty holders, and our operational crews and our fire safety enforcement teams still work with all duty holders to try and reduce that risk, provide that advice and guidance where required on how they manage their unwanted false alarms. And certainly now that we're now only attending sleeping risks, that's now a targeted and focused piece of work to try and reduce that impact further on the organisation and the community. In terms of looking forward, locally, we're looking at implementing a youth volunteer scheme. We're conscious that some of our youth activity membership and some of the programmes have kind of changed and moved. So we're looking to reinvigorate that locally. And we're looking at our bonfire preparations that we're actioning now in order to reduce that risk coming into bonfire period. And again, the big thing really to go back to is that strategic review that we're undertaking, which will then influence the local plans when that consultation comes. Thank you for your time, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, William. I'm obliged to you. Any questions? Councillor Aitchison?
Yeah, thank you very much. Again, a very comprehensive report. Could you describe the support and partnership work undertaken by the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service and the Council, please?
So it's very similar to our colleagues in Police Scotland. We have a community action team which is spread between our counterpart local authority West Lothian and Falkirk. The community action team engage quite extensively with local areas, and you can see the partner referral agencies that we have coming in, such as the housing, social care and all these other elements. They're also part of the local tactical groups which take place that Police Scotland have identified. So our community action teams are engaged in that, so that where there is trends or spikes in activity, then the targeted approaches can then go back in on the site to try and do that multi-agency approach reduction.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Councillor Forrest. No, it's
okay. Thanks for your report. It's very comprehensive. Appendix 1, page 60. The report states, and you reported about it, the accidental dwelling fires, 36%. There was no working fire alarm. I'm really, really shocked at that. It stated that 677 detectors have been fitted. Now, I've seen that firsthand after a fatality not far from where I live. and the phenomenal amount of work that your crew put in to going round and making people more and more aware. Fantastic. They really were top class, and I'd love you to take it back to them because I was really, really impressed. The 677 detectors is fantastic, but again, I'm shocked that that many were needed. Does the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service have the capacity to fit more, should they be required? And would you need more support to carry that out? And given the fact that they're now being interlinked, does that make your job more difficult because it's obviously a single detector that you're putting in these houses?
Thank you for your question, Councillor, and thank you very much for the feedback, and I'll certainly pass that on to the local crews, and it's very valued. In terms of capacity, yes, we do have capacity to fit smoke detectors in premises that are identified through the risk pathway and through the home fire safety visits that require it. We acknowledge the legislative framework that sits within there at the minute, and we don't fit to any other premises that's not required. So where there's a legal responsibility, we would certainly push that legal responsibility is fulfilled, and either landlords or associations are fitting the appropriate level of detection for that dwelling. When it comes to detectors that we fit, we got funding from the Scottish Government to purchase detectors in order to meet legal compliance. So we do fit interlinked detectors within dwellings. They're not hardwired, they have 10-year batteries and they're radio linked between them. So they do meet the legislative requirements. However, as I stated, where there's a legal obligation for someone to fit those detectors, we would certainly encourage that as done in the first instance. And the detectors that we fit are people that would fall out with that framework to ensure that they have that risk reduction in their property.
Thank you for that. I cleared up quite a bit, and honestly, I can't speak highly enough of your crews. So I'm glad you'll take it back. Thank you.
Certainly will. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Binney.
Thank you, convener. I've got a couple of questions for you, and just want to say thank you very much for a very detailed report. And it's good to learn about all these statistics and to learn about improvements. With the requirement, legal requirement for interlinked alarms from February 22, is that provided a significant improvement on fire safety and well-being in our communities? And can you tell me statistics, have they improved now that there is obviously work getting done to fit them all in a lot of our social housing? And just on the back of that, do we have the numbers? I don't know if that can actually be assessed. These alarms in private properties, does the fire service know maybe what percentage overall in the Falkirk Council area that has actually changed? I know it's a legal requirement, but do we actually know how many people's got interlinked alarms in our council area? That's my first question.
Thanks very much for that question, Councillor. That's quite a challenging statistic to come up with, to be fair, mainly because it's people's private dwellings. So what the fire service doesn't know, then ultimately we don't know what happens in a private dwelling. The only point that we would then be aware is if there is an incident or we are invited in through that home fire safety visit. And as I say, the home fire safety visits are the statistics that we would then have. In terms of what smoke alarms currently exist, we only have the statistics on the smoke alarms that we have fitted, because again, going back to that individual's private dwelling, that's all we can record and report on, unfortunately. I'm not sure if we have the knowledge or intelligence to tell us who fitted the smoke alarms in the first instance, and I'm not sure that's a piece of evidence that we gather when we do post-fire investigations on who fitted the smoke detectors. Mainly, currently we look at was our smoke detectors fitted, and did they comply, and were they working? So I think that would probably be a difficult statistic to come back with as well. However, I'm welcome to look at it, and if there is further, then I'm quite happy to share that and come back with that answer.
Thank you. I would really appreciate that. I think we do need to know the statistics, especially if it's a legal requirement, you know, but that would be helpful if that could be found out. Thanks for that. Also, this is a completely different question, and I don't actually see it in the report, but I think it's very relevant in this modern age. We've got increased use of digital computers, charging, mobile phones and gaming by all the family, you know, in homes across the Falkirk Council area. And has any fire risk been identified by using all these appliances? Is this, and also from your perspective, is this something we should be maybe raising awareness or having a campaign? For example, you know, sometimes when you're charging your phones, you know, the plug can get quite hot. And I've heard of instances where, you know, there has been fires because of that. Is that something that you assess, identify, or would that be a campaign? Is that not being looked at all, actually?
Thanks once again for another absolutely relevant question, Councillor. The short answer is yes. We do look at that. There are campaigns that sit nationally. These can be accessed via our website, and we have got specific recommendations over how you charge mobile devices, how you charge any devices. There is a trend starting to appear with lithium-ion batteries, and the byproduct of that, particularly if they've been purchased from probably non-UK importers where the standards may be slightly different. There's a work stream going on nationally to try and raise awareness of that and identify where these risks lie. But you're quite correct. In terms of our reporting, we're quite limited in how we report based on the local plan agreements that were in the offset. But certainly if that's an area that we would like to consider, then when we come to review our local plan, that would be an avenue for us to include that data and look at that in a bit more depth. But certainly from a prevention perspective, the campaigns are absolutely there, the recommendations are there, and as I say, I'm welcome to share the links to those so that they can be circulated a bit wider if need be.
Yeah, well, I personally would be very happy if you could share the links. Obviously, it depends on the committee, but that would be really, really helpful because that's really relevant this moment in time and, you know, family homes across Falkirk Council District.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Binney. Any other questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Redmond.
I just wanted to say, well done. It's a really well presented report. The information's all good. It's really easy to read, and it's, you know, it's sort of reminds you, it's thinking at the fire brigade, but it's so much more you're doing as well with different tasks. Like even in Bonnie Bridges, we're out the other day with the boats in the canal. Oh, it wasn't the other day, it was a wee while ago. Like you were saying, forced entries to homes and that, you've got a wide range of tasks you do, road traffic collisions, and a lot of times you're kind of putting yourself in harm's way to protect people and keep yourself safe. So I think I take my hat off to you. I think you're brilliant. The questions I was just wanting to ask was, it was saying that 66% of fires originate in the kitchen. What sort of things tend to cause this? Is it like ovens, or is it cooking on the hob? Is there things that maybe could be done with these appliances to reduce the risk of fire going forward? I know that's more thing, but is there a particular kitchen fire that seems common?
Well, it certainly used to be the case, Councillor, absolutely, and I think the days of chip pans are you know, not wholly behind us, but because there is some out there, and certainly that was the trends and analysis that we did take. I think moving forward and looking at those trends now, we can't really bottom it down to one specific type. It seems to be more the distraction element. So in the report it mentions how many people were attributed to that distraction or falling asleep, and that seems to be more the cause than ever, where people are starting to cook or starting to prepare food and then are distracted, and then so the actual appliance type doesn't really play hugely into it, because the appliances are where they need to be. Where we do identify any white goods that are problematic, there's national forums for that to be discussed and addressed, and where there is trends in any white goods of a specific brand or make, then that's circulated down through us as well. And when we do our post-fire investigation work, we capture the detail of those goods or those appliances to feed that into that national picture, just to see if there is trends or there is issues and how that can be addressed. But wholly at the minute, I think what we're experiencing is more that distraction whilst cooking, rather than a specific item being the subject of the issue.
All right, thanks. That sort of leads us on a wee bit onto my next question. It was just on page 69. It said over the last 5 years, 61% of all accidental fire fatalities were people aged 60 and over, and more than a third of accidental dwelling fire casualties were also people aged 60 and over. When it comes to age, fire does discriminate. So just thinking about that, if someone is older or they've got an older kind of family relative, what kind of steps could they take could they maybe contact yourselves and look at getting, I don't know, heat detectors fitted? Or would it maybe be, if someone's getting older, is there certain maybe measures you could take, say, all right, we'll take your hob away and we'll give you an air fryer to cook in? Would that be safer? Is there, do you maybe want to expand a bit on that?
Absolutely, Councillor, and thanks once again for a good question. The referral pathway that I discussed is sort of pivotal. So where there's partner agencies in the community that identify people that may be at risk within that age group, then the expectation is that they will then contact us so that we can then go and offer that fire safety advice. And sometimes advice is the easiest and simplest way to reduce that risk. However, where there is elements, and we have had campaigns before where we've removed chip pans and replaced them with a deep fat fire because they're safer and there's mechanisms between there. So there is campaigns where identified that we can address that locally. I think more so the Make the Call campaign, which I mentioned through my statement, that's a national campaign which encourages any family members to look at the people who they're with, and if they are of that sort of aging population that require a wee bit more support, then make that call to the fire service and we can come and have that conversation with them. And if ultimately it does mean fitting detection or recommending detection, then that's something we would do. But as I said, the advice is probably the most important part for me, especially when we're looking at the trends that are coming in, and you know, the distraction elements, and people are getting drawn into social media or drawn into something else, or perhaps just getting a wee bit more forgetful. Then these are areas that we can help and support. And if there is further requirements thereafter, then we can signpost to other agencies as well. So I think those campaigns, I welcome everybody just to push that back through your constituents, and certainly that's the process to go.
I think that'd be ideal. I'll try and look this sort. I seek them out on Facebook and maybe share them and raise a bit of awareness. That'd be really good. Just the kind of last question I had was just on you're talking about the strategic review, and it's not came forward yet, but it was just, I was wondering, when that does come forward, would you be able to share it around elected members? Obviously, you were talking about there might have to be a change in local priorities. I don't know what that means, but it would be interesting as and when you had that, if you could share it with us.
Yeah, absolutely, Councillor. The process is that public consultation needs to take place for any significant changes that come to the organisation, and certainly that would capture with the local plan as well. So my expectation would be, I would love to get all of you involved as much as you want it to be, to shape that local plan to make it fit for the area we're providing that service to. When it comes to the more national strategic review, there will be national campaigns and engagement processes that come, which will be engaging with local authority and elected members such as yourselves to be part of that process and look at what any of these changes that may or may not come. So that bit of work will definitely come. I would probably echo my police colleagues that we come to scrutiny annually. So it would either be, we need to work out how that meeting schedule needs to sit in order to get that communication piece to you, and whether that sits in other meetings or whether we look at frequencies. But I know Brian's mentioned that earlier, or if there's other mechanisms that we need to put that together, such as a meeting that we host to have that engagement session. That's all the work that's going to come when we get to that point.
Yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Cheers.
Thank you, Jack. Councillor Aitchison, did you have a?
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Thanks very much. A couple of points, but I'll all come to the same kind of question. You mentioned the reduction of 10 appliances nationally. Then you also highlighted the Jenner's fire, which sadly had some devastating results, which pass our thoughts on everybody there. And I took from what you says there was appliances we here went through to assist that. So given the appliances from this area were through there, given our high local levels of industry and things like that, it's all hypothetical, but hypotheticals do come to reality at times. Does that potentially put residents of Falkirk at risk?
Through the withdrawal and the temporary withdrawal, there's been quite a lot of work done to ensure that we are not putting anybody at any further risk. There's a lot of data that we've produced that we're using in order to inform our decision making. When it comes to major incidents of that type, the service is quite well placed, but it being a national body, and we can afford to move fire cover and appliances and equipment and resources where and when required in order to support communities. So we don't leave places totally uncovered with fire cover when these big events take place. And as I say, we're fairly well versed in that process now, and our Edinburgh controls have got strategic areas where they ensure fire cover to take account of risks such as what we have within our community here. So moving forward to the strategic review elements, all of that work is evidenced, and it's all evidence-led decision making based on the community risk modelling indexing. So all that data is coming in to ensure that where we are looking at a resourcing, we've got them appropriate and got it fit for purpose. So I would suggest no, there's no further risk, because we'll move resources where we're required, and being a national body, we can take resources from elsewhere in the country that may be required.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? No, thanks very much also for your answers, especially. I mean, they've been pretty enlightening, what we've told you. Can I abuse my position as convener just for 1 minute? So much of the fire accidents in home has been older people. Could I invite you to Falkirk Older Persons Network at some time to give a presentation? Would you be happy with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks very much for that.
Feel free.
Thank you again very much for your time today.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. That was only mild abuse, so it's acceptable. I think we were asked to note the report, and there's a couple of follow-up actions that we pick up on. I think with that being said, we'll finish this item, and you'd indicated you were looking to maybe take just a 10-minute recess before we go into the next
10-minute government break.
Back just before 22.
Okay, thank you. Thanks again. Okay, and welcome back to the External Scrutiny Committee. We're moving on now to following the public pound, public protection, and SACRO is our first contributor.
That's going to be, maybe just to say, this is one of the usual following the public pound reports that the committee receives, and these are organisations that receive funding from the council, and we have a formal monitoring, scrutiny and reporting regime for this. They're external organisations, they're voluntary sector, and they're funded on the basis that they can provide services that are not readily provided by the council, and they are provided in ways that complement those provided by the council and statutory partners. So we have two on the agenda, as you said, SACRO and Committee Attending, SACRO Youth Justice, and Committee Attending Abuse. So I think the standard procedure just is that we'd ask the monitoring officer to give an overview of the report. In this case, it's Laura Lowry.
Officer Lowry. Can I ask you to just give your report, please?
Yes, thank you, councillors. Just before I start, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce myself. I've recently joined Falkirk Council as a service manager in children's services and taken over as the commissioning officer for SACRO's Youth Justice Services. So I'm here today to provide an overview in relation to the report on youth justice services provided by SACRO. Children's Services has worked with SACRO for a number of years. This work is reviewed annually in liaison with our procurement colleagues and managed via a joint working agreement, which continues to work well for all parties. This report has been brought to committee to provide an update on the work undertaken and funding provided by Children's Services. I'll provide a summary of the main points within the report, and then I would welcome questions at the end from committee. So SACRO Services provides support and focused intervention to young people aged 8 to 17 years old at the earliest stage to divert them away from antisocial behaviour and offending behaviour within the community. They take a proactive and early intervention approach, and we've agreed that SACRO will continue to provide support to young people aged 8 years and older despite the change in the age of criminal responsibility, because we recognise that we want to support young people at the earliest point to prevent any escalation in offending behaviour. They complete a structured assessment for each person that they work with to inform an individual intervention based on need. The report highlights a range of support programmes that are provided, and you'll see that victim awareness is a key part of the support. The service also supports young people to address high-risk offending behaviour, including violent or sexual harm towards others. In these cases, young people are usually supported by other agencies, including social work, so there's close collaboration between SACRO and all agencies involved with young people. In terms of our annual target, we have an agreed target that SACRO will support 70 young people per year. Referrals are made by a range of professionals and via the Early and Effective Intervention Panel. In the financial year 2022 to 23, SACRO supported 66 young people. 37 of those young people were aged 15 or older, and 58 of them were male. Of those 66 young people supported, 45 cases were closed on a planned basis, with 38 due to successful intervention being completed. 7 young people were subsequently referred on to lower level services to provide support around a specific issue, and most recently that's been around mental health support and emotional well-being for young people. The report outlines that there were 6 re-referrals. On these occasions, re-referrals were made for younger people a number of years after the first intervention with SACRO, and on each occasion a short further intervention was completed successfully and there was no need for any ongoing support after a period of time. So this high number of overall planned endings highlights the positive impact that the support can have for young people in the Falkirk area in reducing risky behaviours and reducing the escalation of behaviours to a point that requires further intervention. Quarterly monitoring meetings take place where the outcomes for young people are shared with Children's Services, and this overview continues to inform us that the outcomes are improving for young people in the Falkirk area. In terms of funding, you will note within the report that there was an overall increase in the funding provided to SACRO in the last financial year from £78,000 to £90,000. This was not because of an increase in the cost of the service provision, but was a reflection of the decision to bring the administration of the Early and Effective Intervention Panel into this joint working agreement. We took the opportunity to consolidate the funding of all functions within this same joint working agreement. So that concludes my brief overview of the report, and I would now welcome committee to ask any questions that they have.
Thanks very much. Are there any other questions? Or any questions? No, well, personally, can I ask you, the 90,000, can you break that down, how that funding's used?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. I don't have the specific breakdown of how that is used in front of me just now, but that's information that I can seek and provide feedback on.
That'd be fantastic. Thanks very much. Is there any other questions? No, we just accept the report.
No.
Sorry, Councillor Aitchison.
Hi there, thank you for your report. Can I just ask, the report states that 17 cases were closed on an unplanned basis. Can you explain what unplanned basis is, what they would be, please?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So unplanned would be where SACRO had not been able to complete the intervention to the point that they would have liked. Of those 17 cases, there were situations where 5 parents didn't give consent for the work to take place. And the rest of the cases did not progress due to young people either not consenting to engage with the service or being unable to engage with the service due to a change in their circumstances. So in each situation, if there is a non-engagement, the case will be taken back to the early and effective intervention panel for discussion and review, and it would be then agreed which professional might try to progress an alternative way of support with the young person in the family.
Thank you, that was really helpful, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. Okay. Accept report.
Agreed.
Agreed. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
I think with that then, can we move on to the second of the reports, which is committed to ending abuse, and that's Joanna Stewart's going to take you through her report.
Thanks, Joanna.
Morning committee. My name's Joanna Stewart. I'm the Housing Support Coordinator within the Housing Needs Service. I think many of you will know my face because I'm here every year on reporting again on committing to ending abuse. It's been good to follow the subsequent reports, especially that of Police Scotland, and those of the questions of the members to highlight the challenges surrounding domestic abuse and funding within the area at this current time. I've provided a brief report for members which mainly looks to highlight the issues that are being experienced by this organisation and the activities that we're looking at to support them. Most of you will know that Committed to Ending Abuse have delivered support to those affected by domestic abuse for several years now. Referrals to the organisation come from professionals who are supporting victims as well as from the victims themselves. There are no restrictions on how victims can access the service, and it's well known that taking the steps to leave an abusive relationship can take a lot of courage. Of those accessing the service, we mainly see that it's women that are accessing SIA. So SIA offer a 3-tier support model that deals with the initial crisis of domestic abuse right to the recovery of the trauma from that abuse. They support victims within the service, focusing mainly on the initial crisis and the safety and well-being of the victim, and that's what we kind of fund in terms of the initial crisis and the safety. This can involve supporting them to leave an abusive relationship, support them with the safety planning for that, and helping them with the practical elements of restarting their lives away from their abuser. So in 22-23, they supported nearly 800 new referrals. In terms of the quality and the performance of the service that we've seen over the period, the organisation is inspected under the Care Inspectorate. The last inspection was back in 2019, but from that they've scored very, very good reports from the Care Inspectorate, and they're very satisfied with the delivery of their services. In terms of what we monitor, we look at service user feedback, and 100% of service users are saying that they felt safer following engagement with SIA and have noticed an improvement in their health and well-being as well as a result of that. In terms of the overall concerns for the organisation, I've cited 2 issues that we have currently, and these 2 are actually interlinked. The organisation are currently not managing to address all the referrals that they're receiving straight away. It's operating now on a waiting list to assist the less urgent cases. That's not to say that all referrals are addressed and assessed for risk at the point of contact, but should they place a lesser risk, they're placed on a waiting list, which is operating at around 80 days at the moment. Of course, the second reason for the waiting list is the ongoing surrounding finances for the organisation. Falkirk Council's following public pound budget has remained unchanged for several years. As we all know, the cost of living has increased and therefore the living wage. In order to fulfil their commitment to the living wage, CF have had to reduce their workforce, and this subsequently has placed pressure on the service and its ability to support the client needs straight away. In addition to this, the level of those accessing the service has increased over the last 5 years by around 20%. We've been working closely alongside the organisation as well as with the Health and Social Care Partnership and Social Work Services over the last few years to review finances and the funding opportunities, as well as looking at streamlining services and processes. As an interim measure, short-term additional funding has been granted from Falkirk Council and from the Health and Social Care Partnership, and this has just recently been extended. It wasn't available at the time that I wrote the report, but we've provided additional funding again from Falkirk Council, the Health and Social Care Partnership, as well as a contribution from Police Scotland towards the organisation. And we'll still continue to support them in terms of reviewing their financial circumstances. Lastly, members will know that domestic abuse and gender-based violence is one of the 6 key themes within the within the Falkirk plan, which is highlighted as a major public health, equality and human rights issue. The organisation will continue to work to keep those affected by domestic abuse in the Falkirk area safe in very difficult circumstances. As we enter yet another period of uncertainty with the cost of living crisis, members will appreciate that the organisation will have great challenges ahead to support their service users. Their assistance often goes above and beyond their remit to ensure that the victims of domestic abuse are supported and safe. And as I said, we'll continue to support the organisation during this time. So I just welcome any questions if any members have.
Okay, thank you, Joanna. Councillor
Forrest.
What's that? I've got a little
Same name as it was last week.
We're so used to talking first name.
I thank you, convener. Thanks. I'm glad to hear that there has been a recent increase in funding from Falkirk Council. But can you break down the use of that funding for us a wee bit?
Yes, Councillor, the funding's mainly towards staff and resources, and it's for the direct support for the individuals. So in terms of the waiting list increasing, it's because the staffing has had to reduce, but the funding's purely and mainly surrounding staff and resources. In terms of the actual numbers, I think it equates to 1.5 full-time, maybe 2.5 full-time posts.
So that 2.5 will make quite a difference to taking it back to what it was.
In terms of the additional funding, sorry, Councillor, I'm not aware yet of how they're going to utilise that because it's literally just been agreed within the last 2 weeks. So I can confirm that back to committee.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much for that.
Thank you, Councillor Forrest. Stephen?
Yeah, thank you, Joanna. Falkirk Council provided 216,000 funding to the organisation. The report states that this will decrease to £178,500 the next year. What impact will the reduced funding have on this service?
We've already seen the impact of that. The impact is that the reduction of the waiting list that the organisation have had to implement.
Yeah, you had touched a good bit on that in your report and things. The report states that it was agreed that key stakeholders would provide some additional funding. Do you have any further details of this funding or how much it would be or whatever else?
In terms of the additional funding going into financial year 23-24, There's been an increase of 15,000 to the organisation. So yeah, and that's £5,000 from Health and Social Care Partnership, Falkirk Council itself, and Police Scotland.
So it's still down on what you would have had. Thank you.
It's still down on what was on
Yeah.
previous years.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Binney.
Thank you. Thank you very much for telling us about this service, which it's vital for our communities. My question is, clients are more likely to approach a service that is not aligned to statutory social work services to help them to address their personal situation, and they're more likely to engage with independent services that can represent them fairly on their behalf. Does this suggest that the services this organisation provides are also provided by our social work services too? Do they use this service?
Yes, absolutely. All the statutory services within the local authority refer on to the organisation. The majority of referrals are from the individuals themselves, but that may be with encouragement or with information provision from statutory services. But yes, many of the statutory services refer on to the organisation.
Thank you. That was helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? No? Okay, we accept the report.
Agreed.
Thanks very much for your time. It's a very important service you run. It really is for so many people that are even frightened to come forward to anybody. Thanks very much again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, convener. I think that concludes the business of the committee. We're happy to close the meeting.
Happy to close the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for your attendance.
Thank you.